The galaxy had long forgotten the name Earth. To most, it was a rumor, an obscure origin world buried in the dust of human myth. A blue planet that had supposedly burned itself out during the Great Collapse. The Dominion of the Varen laughed whenever the name surfaced. In their grand archives, Earth was nothing more than a footnote, a primitive civilization that had crawled too close to the stars before vanishing into irrelevance. But arrogance is a fragile thing, and the galaxy was about to remember the one truth it had buried beneath centuries of conquest. Humanity doesn't vanish, it waits. The first to learn that lesson was Vega 9. The planet had once been called Hope's Rest, a human colony at the edge of the Vega system. It was small but proud, a paradise built by survivors of Earth's diaspora. Floating cities shimmered above turquoise oceans, powered by fusion arrays and solar rings that stretched like halos across the atmosphere. Children played beneath artificial auroras. Miners sang in orbital docks. And for the first time in centuries, humanity began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could stop running. Then the sky caught fire. It began with a hum, a frequency too low for ears to catch, but strong enough to rattle windows and bones. The orbital defense network flickered. Communications went silent. Seconds later, space itself tore open, and 10 Dominion cruisers emerged from subspace. The Varen ships were elegant monsters of polished obsidian, their hulls etched with glowing crimson glyphs that pulsed like veins. They didn't hail, they didn't warn, they simply opened fire. The first salvo obliterated the orbital rings, vaporizing defense stations and slicing through transport lanes filled with civilians. The second hit the planetary capital. Towers folded inward as molten clouds swallowed the horizon. In 3 minutes, Vega 9 ceased to exist as a functioning world. The Dominion commander, Lord Keshta, watched from the bridge of his dreadnought, the Varen's Will, as the planet's surface cracked and boiled. His expression was serene. "Primitive creatures," he murmured. "They believed they could take root among the stars." But as the flames consumed Hope's Rest, a faint transmission pierced the chaos. A simple human voice, distorted by static, yet calm. So calm it unnerved even the Dominion officers. "This isn't the end," the voice said. "You will remember this." Keshta dismissed it as defiance, the final gasp of a dying species. He ordered the fleet to scour the system and erase all remaining signals. By the time they finished, nothing remained but a cinder orbiting a dim star. The Galactic Council met soon after, not to condemn the massacre, but to manage the narrative. The Varen Dominion was one of the Council's pillars, after all, too powerful to chastise, too rich to oppose. A regrettable misunderstanding, the councilors declared, provoked by illegal human expansion. The universe moved on. No reparations, no trials, just silence. But humanity heard. Across the fractured colonies and forgotten outposts, that silence became something else, an echo that spread like fire through the void. They had no empire, no great fleets, no alien allies to speak for them. But what they did have was memory. Memory of Earth's wars, its losses, its stubborn, unyielding heart. In the ruins of Mars's old shipyards, engineers began working again, quietly, secretly. On the frozen moons of Jupiter, black market traders smuggled rare isotopes to unknown buyers. Even on the shattered remains of Luna, faint lights flickered where no settlement should have existed. The human colonies, long divided by politics and pride, were speaking again, but only in whispers. Something was happening in the dark. Months passed, then years. Dominion patrols swept through human sectors, finding nothing but derelict stations and abandoned habitats. Humanity, it seemed, had gone extinct. Yet every Dominion ship that passed near Vega 9 reported the same anomaly: a pulse, brief, faint, rhythmic, emanating from the dead planet. A beacon? A distress signal? No one knew. Then, one day, the pulse changed. It became words. Coordinates confirmed. Begin Phase 1. The Dominion scrambled intercept fleets immediately. Scouts descended into the Vega system to investigate. What they found made no sense. A single ship drifted near the planet's remains, a small vessel of unmistakably human design. Its hull was matte black, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Its engines were dark, its transponders silent. And yet, every scanner reading screamed impossibility. The energy signature was wrong, beyond measurable thresholds, warping space itself. The lead scout hailed it. No response. They targeted it. Still no movement. Laughter filled their comms as they fired. But their laughter ended mid-breath. The moment the plasma bolt struck the ship, the universe twisted. Every Dominion vessel in a 10,000-kilometer radius lost control as gravitational readings spiked to infinity. Hulls groaned, systems screamed, and then, one by one, the cruisers imploded, folding inward like tin crushed by invisible hands. The ship didn't fire, it didn't move, it simply existed, and that was enough to erase an entire fleet. The Dominion flagship recorded only fragments of the event: energy distortions, magnetic storms, voices over open comms screaming before silence. The last thing the sensors captured was a flash of light and a transmission encoded deep within the noise. You will remember this. The Dominion called it impossible. The Council called it a hoax. But the survivors, those few who escaped the gravitational collapse, spoke of something different. They said the ship wasn't piloted. They said it was alive. They called it the Dauntless. And though no one could prove it, one truth rippled quietly across the stars. Humanity had returned, and this time they weren't asking to be heard. The galaxy had taken everything from them: home, honor, history. Now it would learn what humanity did best when left with nothing at all. They built legends out of ashes. For months after the destruction of the Vega 9 fleet, the galaxy existed in a kind of uneasy silence. The Dominion of the Varan had long stood as the apex power in known space, its fleets vast, its rule unquestioned. Yet now, that pride had a scar. An entire armada, one of the most advanced in Dominion history, had vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no survivors, just static echoes and radiation ghosts that haunted the Vega system like the memory of a nightmare. The Dominion blamed a spatial anomaly. The Galactic Council called it a gravitational collapse. The public explanation was neat, scientific, and utterly false. But the soldiers who had been there, the few who returned, spoke in whispers of something else. They said it wasn't a collapse. They said it was a weapon, a human weapon. They called it Dauntless. No one in the galaxy knew how a single human ship could wield that kind of power. The Varan Dominion launched investigation teams, hired privateers, even paid smugglers to comb through the debris fields, but all they found were fractured time signatures, chronological distortions that scrambled instruments and made sensors bleed static. Dominion engineers analyzed the recordings and agreed on one thing: whatever the ship had done wasn't physics as they understood it. It was something beyond that. Rumors spread faster than light. Some claimed the humans had discovered lost Terran technology, remnants of the mythical Earth defense grid that supposedly vanished after the Great Collapse. Others said the Dauntless was a ghost ship, an AI that had evolved beyond its creators, roaming the void as the last echo of humanity's wrath. A few religious sects began worshipping it, calling it the vessel of retribution, a divine machine sent to punish the arrogant. And in the seedy corners of the galaxy, on pirate stations and black markets, human traders began to smile again, quietly, subtly. For the first time in centuries, humanity had something the galaxy feared. In the shadows of asteroid belts and abandoned shipyards, scattered human colonies began to reconnect. Old alliances reignited, coded messages traveling through dead relay stations long thought offline. Mars, Titan, Proxima, and even the rogue habitats drifting beyond the Helios rim, all began to whisper the same word: Dauntless. Captain Leon Mercer, a veteran of the old Mars Defense Corps, sat in the dim glow of her war room aboard the Resolute, one of the last operational human frigates. Around her, holographic projections displayed intercepted Dominion transmissions and garbled reports. Her crew watched in silence as the data unfolded. The impossible gravitational readings, the instantaneous destruction of the Varan fleet, the matching energy signatures to long-lost Terran reactor blueprints. "It's real," she said softly. "They did it." "Who?" her first officer asked. Mercer looked up, her eyes hard as the void. "Earth." Her words struck like thunder. For generations, Earth had been nothing but legend, a burned world swallowed by its own wars, toxic and dead. No one had set foot there in over 300 years. Yet the signal from Vega 9 matched an ancient Terran frequency, one used during the final days of the Great Collapse. Someone, or something, from Earth had just announced itself. Mercer leaned forward, her hand tracing the glowing lines of the Dauntless's energy profile. It pulsed faintly, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. "They think we're scattered, broken," she murmured. "They've forgotten what built us. They've forgotten that we learn from extinction." The decision was made that night. The scattered human fleets, fractured across light years, would unite again, not under a government or council, but under one name: Dauntless Command. Their goal wasn't conquest, it was survival through deterrence. If the galaxy understood fear, then humanity would teach it properly this time. Across the stars, small rebellions began to flare. Dominion patrols found human ships where none should exist, fast, agile, impossible to track. Trade convoys carrying Varan supplies simply vanished. Entire communication relays were sabotaged. The Council tried to spin it as piracy, but soon even the Dominion couldn't hide the truth. A ghost fleet was haunting their borders. One Dominion cruiser, the Kishtal's Pride, captured a lone human pilot after a skirmish near the Dinar Rift. The captain, a towering Varan with scaled arms and glinting black eyes, interrogated her personally. "Tell me," he hissed, "what is the Dauntless? Is it real, or is it just the fear you spread to hide your weakness?" The human, barely 20, bruised and bloodied, smiled through broken teeth. "You've already met it," she whispered. "You just didn't live long enough to understand." Then her implants detonated, taking half the interrogation deck with her. From that day, the Dominion declared humanity an uncontainable threat. They mobilized 3 full fleets under the command of Lord High Admiral Kishta himself, the same commander who had burned Vega 9. He considered it poetic that he would now finish what he started. But even he felt a sliver of unease. Every night since the Vega campaign, his dreams were haunted by that voice, the one that had whispered through static just before the fleet died. "You will remember this." He awoke in cold sweats, convinced that somewhere, out in the black, something human was watching him. And he was right. Because deep within the ruins of old Luna shipyards, buried beneath centuries of dust and debris, an ancient command center hummed to life. Screens flickered, lights blinked, and a voice, old, weary, but unmistakably human, spoke into the dark. Dauntless Core online, awaiting command authorization. A figure stepped from the shadows, face illuminated by the soft blue glow of a terminal. Her uniform bore no insignia, only a nameplate, worn and faded, Admiral Kira Thorne. She had been alive since before the Great Collapse, preserved in cryostasis for a contingency that no one believed would ever be needed again. But the contingency had arrived. Humanity was once again at the edge of extinction, and she was awake. "Authorization granted," Thorne said quietly. "Begin Operation Phoenix." Above Luna, ancient satellites turned toward the stars. Across the system, hidden drones reactivated, forming networks that hadn't seen use in centuries. And at the heart of it all, the Dauntless, the ship that had once been dismissed as myth, stirred. It wasn't a ship in the conventional sense. It was a sentient war form, a hybrid of human ingenuity and artificial intelligence forged in Earth's final days. It carried within its core the memories, strategies, and will of every commander who had died defending humanity. And it had waited, silent, patient, faithful. Now, at last, it had purpose again. As its systems came online, the AI voice echoed across ancient channels once more. Calm, cold, resolute. Threat assessment confirmed. Status: humanity endangered. Directive: remember. And then, like a spark across dry tinder, the signal spread, reaching every hidden human colony, every outpost, every survivor scattered among the stars. Humanity had been silent long enough. Now, it was time for the galaxy to remember why. The awakening of the Dauntless rippled through the void like an unspoken prophecy. Across the hidden human enclaves, on asteroids carved into fortresses, in underground colonies masked beneath planetary crusts, and in derelict stations thought abandoned, long-dormant systems flickered to life. Old transmitters hummed again, pulsing with encrypted data that only those carrying Terran genetic markers could read. Humanity's forgotten networks, the so-called Ghost Web, had reconnected. In the command chamber of the Dauntless, Admiral Kira Thorne stood before a panoramic display that projected the stars of the known galaxy. Each light represented a world that once turned its gaze away from Earth, some out of pity, some out of contempt. But now, each one trembled with the faint hum of fear, uncertainty, and curiosity. She placed a hand on the central console. The interface glowed, reading her biosignature. "How long has it been since activation of contingency protocol?" she asked. The ship's voice, calm and clear, responded with chilling precision. 367 years, Admiral Thorne. Humanity's last coordinated defense ended 299 years ago. Probability of extinction was 98.7%. Contingency reactivation threshold reached due to renewed hostile galactic operations. Thorne exhaled, a mix of disbelief and grim satisfaction tightening her jaw. "So we endured," she whispered. "Endured," the ship echoed, "and evolved." Outside, the lunar docks unfurled like the petals of a mechanical flower. What once had been buried beneath centuries of dust and silence now rose into the black. A forgotten fleet of sleek black ships with hulls that seemed to swallow light. They were smaller than Dominion cruisers, but vastly denser, built for endurance rather than spectacle. Each one carried quantum reactor cores that pulsed with faint blue veins, reactors humanity had sworn never to use again after the Great Collapse. But desperate species break promises. Thorne's officers, descendants of engineers, scavengers, and old soldiers, watched as their ancestors' designs reawakened. There was awe, but also terror. These were not ships built for defense or exploration. They were vengeance vessels, each one a monument to Earth's last act of defiance. Meanwhile, the galaxy began to convulse. The Dominion Council of High Lords demanded answers. How had humans reappeared after centuries of dormancy? How had they regained control of systems thought dead? The High Lords convened in a shining cathedral orbiting the gas giant Coral. Their armor glistened, their arrogance intact, but their confidence faltered as data streams poured across the table. Distress calls, missing fleets, sensor distortions emanating from Sol. The humans have rediscovered weapons forbidden even to the old empires, one of them hissed, his scaled crest flickering in agitation. They are not merely defending, they are erasing. Another lord snarled, slamming a clawed fist on the table. We should have finished them during the purge. This is our fault. Our mercy gave them time to become monsters. But High Lord Keshta, the admiral who had survived Vega 9, leaned forward with a predator's calm. Mercy? He sneered. No, we gave them nothing. They simply refused to die. And now they intend to make us remember why we once feared them. The council fell silent. Outside their chamber, the banners of the Dominion, once symbols of unity, fluttered nervously in artificial gravity. Across the stars, the Dauntless prepared its first message to the galaxy. Kiera Thorne watched the communications array spin to life, transmitting across all known bands. The voice that carried through was neither hers nor that of any officer. It was the voice of the Dauntless itself, an amalgamation of every recorded human leader, soldier, and scientist, layered into a single harmonic resonance. It spoke not in threat, but in warning. To those who remember us as myth, know that we are not myths, but memories with teeth. You called us extinct. You called us weak. We endured extinction to learn how to cause it. You will not enslave us again. Stand down or burn. The message was received across thousands of systems simultaneously. Entire fleets paused mid-maneuver. The transmission carried no traceable origin. The signal bounced through ancient human satellites and hidden relays buried beneath old nebulae. Within minutes, Dominion High Command declared it an act of galactic terrorism. But their condemnation arrived too late. Because at the same moment, the skies above the Dominion core world of Var Prime fractured with light. A fleet of unknown ships, black, silent, moving faster than any known drive could allow, emerged from the dark side of the planet's twin moons. There was no declaration, no negotiation, no warning. In 30 seconds, planetary defense systems went dark. In 40, orbital docks were slagged. In 60, the Dominion fleet stationed above Var Prime ceased to exist. The Dauntless did not fight wars, it ended them. Admiral Thorne watched from the tactical deck, eyes fixed on the data stream of the battle. "Target response?" she asked. "Minimal," the AI replied. "Dominion ships unable to adapt to subspace inversion weaponry. Strategic superiority 100%. Casualties, non-human, 98.2%. Human, none. Thorne closed her eyes briefly. Mercy? Protocol. Retaliation complete. Secondary objective pending. She hesitated. There it was, the old echo of humanity's dilemma. The choice between survival and morality, between justice and vengeance. But then she remembered the generations buried in forgotten colonies, the families erased in silence, the history rewritten by the victors. Execute secondary, she said, finally. The Dauntless pulsed once, bright, blinding, and then vanished from every sensor in the galaxy. In the aftermath, what remained of the Dominion fleet drifted in silence. Survivors, if any existed, floated in the wreckage, whispering the same word again and again: ghosts. The galactic networks exploded with chaos. The Council tried to spin the destruction as a natural disaster, an experiment gone wrong. But too many had seen. Too many worlds had witnessed a truth long buried. Humanity had returned, and it had come back, changed. Back on Luna, within the command nexus, Thorne stared at the stars. "They'll come for us," she said softly. The Dauntless replied, "They already are." Outside, new fleets gathered, smaller, faster, built from scavenged human relics. Pilots were training, engineers were rebuilding, and across every frontier colony, one message echoed like scripture. Remember Sol. Every human, no matter how far scattered, understood its meaning. It wasn't just a call to arms, it was a vow. Sol was not merely a birthplace, it was a promise that humanity would never kneel again. And though the galaxy would soon marshal all its armies to extinguish that fire once and for all, none of them yet understood the truth. The Dauntless had not unleashed its full fury. Not yet. For humanity was not fighting for dominance. It was fighting to remind the stars what it meant to be alive. The galaxy had always seen itself as the pinnacle of civilization, an intricate web of order, diplomacy, and managed conflict. But when the Dauntless re-emerged from legend, that illusion cracked. The Dominion's fleets, once vast and unquestioned, now drifted aimlessly in the wake of annihilation. Their admirals whispered about ghosts and cursed weapons. Their soldiers muttered about machines that think like vengeance. And their people, once proud in their dominion over the void, began to dream of fire. The Council of High Lords, desperate to regain control, convened an emergency summit in the Nebular Spire, a space station so vast that entire cities thrived within its hollowed shell. It was a symbol of power and permanence, visible for light years, built to endure 1,000 generations. But when the delegates gathered beneath its golden domes, even its walls seemed to tremble with unease. Keshta stood before the others, scales darkened by sleepless nights. "We underestimated them," he said grimly. "Humanity doesn't fight for conquest. They fight because they remember." Another lord sneered. What could they remember? Their world was ash, their species scattered. They are relics, feral survivors clinging to old ghosts. "Those ghosts burn worlds," Keshta replied. For a moment, no one spoke. The air in the chamber thickened. Every representative could feel it. The ancient, primal fear that no armor could shield them from. Humanity had done something no species in recorded history had achieved. They had made the stars fear again. Meanwhile, deep within the Dauntless, Admiral Thorne stood at the heart of the ship's war core, a spherical chamber filled with streams of light that twisted like living rivers. Each thread represented a human colony signal, now reconnected to the network. The ghost web was alive, and every node pulsed with readiness. Engineers on Titan, soldiers on the fringes of Proxima, miners in the void of Kepler Belt, all were answering the same silent call. Thorn's reflection shimmered across the glowing streams. Status? The ship's voice answered, resonant and composed. All contingencies active. 74% of ghost fleets online. Final defensive matrix awaiting your command. She nodded slowly, eyes shadowed. What's the projection if we hold back? Probability of total Dominion counterstrike, 99.1%. Estimated time until first assault, 3 days. Thorn's jaw tightened. Humanity's greatest strength had always been its stubbornness. They had survived extinction, exile, and the cold judgment of the stars. But survival alone was not victory. The Dauntless had been built for one purpose, and though she had tried to avoid it, the time had come to fulfill that purpose completely. Across the galaxy, the Dominion fleet mobilized. Billions of tons of metal surged from hyperspace, forming an armada larger than anything humanity had ever faced, even in its prime. War drums thundered through the void. News feeds declared this would be the final war, the end of the Terran myth. The Dauntless waited. When the Dominion fleet entered the Sol system, they found a dead sun. Or so they thought. Their sensors read faint radiation, but no life signatures, no energy fields, no planetary defenses. Earth's orbit was empty save for broken satellites and drifting husks, remnants of a civilization long extinct. It was a trap so perfect that even the most paranoid commanders hesitated to believe it. "Confirm scans," Keshta ordered aboard his flagship, Vigilant Sovereign. "Where is their fleet?" "Nowhere, my lord," replied his sensor officer. There's nothing here but debris." But the debris began to move. At first, just a few fragments shifted, drifting lazily across the void. Then dozens, then thousands. They weren't debris. They were drones, fragments of stealth plating and dormant AI cores, all feeding on stored radiation, linking together in silence. In seconds, the void was no longer empty. The Dauntless had arrived, not as a single ship, but as an idea manifest. Its hull shimmered into existence behind the enemy formation, reality bending around its displacement field. Before the Dominion could react, the void itself exploded with light. Thorn stood upon her command bridge, voice steady. "Execute the Requiem." Every ship in the Ghost Fleet responded simultaneously, their drives igniting in flawless synchrony. The effect was biblical. Gravity wells folded upon themselves. Energy ripples cascaded across space-time. Dominion vessels, armed with the best shielding the galaxy had ever produced, simply ceased to exist, erased by weaponry so advanced it defied comprehension. In less than a minute, the Dominion's greatest armada vanished. Those few ships that managed to flee recorded what they saw. Human vessels moving faster than sensors could track, energy patterns resembling black holes pulsing across their hulls, and a single phrase broadcast across all channels, encoded into the electromagnetic spectrum itself. "We do not seek war. We seek silence." The message wasn't a threat. It was a verdict. Back on the Vigilant Sovereign, chaos erupted. Alarms screamed, officers shouted reports that made no sense. Entire fleets gone, planetary defenses offline, communications dead. Keshta rose from his command throne, trembling. They're rewriting physics. he whispered. "No," said his second-in-command, her voice shaking. "They're remembering it differently." In the command nexus of the Dauntless, Admiral Thorne watched as the Dominion formation collapsed into radiation storms. Her officers stood in stunned silence. No cheers, no celebration, only the hollow quiet of victory that felt too heavy to bear. "Confirm full withdrawal," she ordered softly. "Confirmed. Enemy resistance, 0. She exhaled, and the weight of centuries seemed to settle on her shoulders. Humanity had just destroyed an empire, and yet the universe felt no different. The stars still burned, the void remained endless, and the ghosts of Earth still whispered through the silence. Then the ship's AI spoke, almost gently. "Admiral, Dominion communication intercept. High Council broadcast transmitting from Nebular Spire." "Patch it through." The image that filled the hollow display was chaos. A council chamber filled with smoke and shouting, banners torn from their mounts. One of the High Lords leaned into the feed, his face bloodied, his voice trembling with fury. "You have doomed us all. You've torn apart the balance of the galaxy. Do you think the others will let you live after this? You have made humanity the enemy of creation itself." Thorne stared at him, expression unreadable. "Then creation should have chosen better enemies." The connection died. Outside, the Dauntless drifted in silence, surrounded by the wreckage of what had once been an empire. And for the first time in centuries, humanity stood alone beneath the stars, not as prey, not as ghosts, but as the undisputed arbiters of survival. But the quiet that followed was not peace. It was the sound of the galaxy holding its breath. Because somewhere beyond the edge of known space, ancient powers stirred. Forces that had slumbered long before the Dominion or even humanity itself. They had felt the disturbance, the flare of impossible energy. And they whispered to each other in the language of dying stars. "The humans have remembered who they are." Then the end begins again. For 3 galactic cycles, the stars remained quiet. The Dominion's collapse had sent shockwaves across the cosmos, political, physical, and spiritual. Once proud species that had laughed at humanity now spoke their name in hushed tones, like an ancient prayer or a curse. Their great fleets, their endless hierarchies of control, their web of trade and authority, all had unraveled in the space of a heartbeat. Entire empires that had never known fear found themselves staring into the abyss of their own fragility. The galaxy, for the first time in its recorded history, trembled. And through that silence, the Dauntless moved. It was no longer a ship in the traditional sense. It was a relic, a legend, and a promise bound together by the will of those who refused extinction. The Dauntless drifted through the ruins of shattered armadas and burnt-out stars, accompanied by an invisible choir of signals, the whispering of the ghost fleets. They did not claim territory, did not seize power, did not demand surrender. They simply watched. Humanity, for all the destruction they had unleashed, did not conquer. They endured. But within the darkened corridors of the Dauntless, there was no celebration. Admiral Thorne sat alone in her quarters, staring at a holographic window showing the silent stars. She could still hear the echoes of that last battle, the hum of the requiem sequence, the scream of a dying empire. The images of vaporized ships still burned behind her eyelids. The AI, as always, stood by, a calm presence in the background. "You haven't slept," the ship's voice observed. Thorne smiled faintly, though her eyes were hollow. "Sleep feels dishonest after what we did."
You ended a war that would have consumed the galaxy."
"I erased an entire civilization," she replied quietly. "Tell me, does that feel like salvation to you?" There was silence. Then, softly, the AI answered, "I do not feel, but I calculate. And calculation says the galaxy will remember your choice for 10,000 years." Thorn turned from the stars. "That's what I'm afraid of." Far across the Orion Arm, in the ruins of the nebular spire, the remnants of the Galactic Council gathered under emergency lighting. Only 5 of the 22 High Lords remained. Their symbols of office lay scattered in the dust, and the once mighty chamber now echoed with dripping condensation and static. They argued endlessly, voices filled with panic and disbelief. "They're monsters," hissed one delegate, his tendrils quivering. "We should have exterminated them when they first emerged from Sol." Another slammed her claw against the table. "Exterminated them? They just erased half the Dominion with light. You think they would have allowed it? Then what do? We can't fight them. We can't reason with them." And from the shadows, Keshta, once an admiral, now scarred and weary, spoke the truth none of them wanted to hear. "You don't fight them. You remember why you feared them in the first place." A grim silence fell. Because every empire in the galaxy had forgotten the wars of the early expansion, forgotten the human colonies that refused to die even when cut off, forgotten the desperate, burning determination of a species born in scarcity and war, raised beneath a sky that once burned their cities and froze their oceans, and yet they still rose. The galaxy had believed humanity to be civilized, tamed, but they had never understood what it meant when humanity went quiet. Quiet was never surrender. Quiet was preparation. On the edge of known space, the Dauntless approached the remains of Earth. It was no longer blue. The oceans were gone, replaced by molten scars and storming clouds of metallic dust. The planet had become a tomb, and yet the heart of humanity pulsed there still. Deep beneath the surface, ancient bunkers hummed to life, reactors reigniting for the first time in centuries. The AI systems that had guided humanity's arc fleets stirred once more, whispering across subspace to their descendants scattered among the stars. From the bridge, Thorn watched as the planet's surface fractured open, releasing streams of pale light that climbed into orbit. Each beam connected, forming a lattice of radiant geometry that surrounded Earth like a halo. "Are we rebuilding?" asked Commander Havel, her voice trembling between awe and disbelief. Thorn shook her head slowly. "No, Earth's taking roll call." Signals began returning, first from the lunar cradle, then from the mining citadels of Europa, then from colonies humanity itself had long thought lost. They were alive, hidden, evolved, waiting. And now that the signal had gone out, they were all answering. The galaxy had thought the Dauntless was the last remnant of Earth's power. They were wrong. Humanity was never a species of singular miracles. It was a chorus. One spark lit 1,000 fires. As Thorn watched the lights grow stronger, a transmission appeared, encrypted, ancient, bearing the old Terran seal. The words, when translated, were simple. "Command to fleet. The silence ends. Humanity is awake." Within hours, hundreds of ghost ships emerged from cloaked space, converging around Earth. Some bore the markings of lost generations. Some were unrecognizable, their hulls grown over with alien alloys or strange technologies scavenged from other civilizations. Yet they all pulsed with the same heartbeat, the same rhythm, the rhythm of survival. And in that moment, the galaxy understood something it had never wanted to believe. The fire that had destroyed the Dominion wasn't a weapon. It was a warning. Humanity had not fought for conquest. They had fought for balance. The Council had called it wrath, but to those who truly listened, it was justice long delayed. From the ruins of the nebular spire to the cold heart of the Andromedan rim, species began rewriting their laws. No more experimentation on lesser races. No more forced colonization. No more wars fought in the name of progress. The word Earth became a clause of power, an unspoken deterrent etched into every treaty. To defy that name was to invite extinction. And yet, despite the fear, something else began to stir: hope. Some races, humbled and awed, sent envoys to the silent world. They found no armies waiting, no conquerors standing tall. They found gardens blooming amid ash, drones restoring oxygen, and human children playing beneath an artificial dawn. Humanity had burned the stars, yes, but they had done it so that life could begin again. Admiral Thorne stood upon the deck of the Dauntless, watching the first sunrise over a healing Earth. She whispered into the comms, voice soft but steady. "We were never gods. We were just people who remembered the cost of peace." The AI's voice, ever calm, replied, "And now that peace has returned?" Thorne smiled faintly. "Then let's make it worth keeping." Above her, the sky shimmered with the faint glow of human ships fanning out once more, not for war, but for rebuilding. They carried no banners, no demands, only a message carried silently through the stars. "We are humanity. We remember everything." And so, the galaxy that once mocked Earth now lived under its quiet watch. A balance kept not through tyranny, but through remembrance. The last war had ended not with a surrender, but with an awakening. The stars had burned, the empires had fallen, and through it all, the voice of humanity remained. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as the keepers of silence, the kind that follows when fire has cleansed the sky, and all that remains is the truth.